Welcome back to another edition of Orange and Blue. Today we are presented by Champ Honda at Cecil, Lammey, Andrew Mason. Training camp preview continues for the Denver Broncos, and we're talking special teams. I know, Mace, you, as a teams nerd, you're super excited about this show, my friend.
Well, yeah, and I'm super excited that we're actually talking about a lot of questions at special teams. When it's settled, it's boring. There's nothing boring about the state of things on special teams at least two major parts of it when we're talking about the specialists here. An awful lot has changed this offseason, and no surprise because special teams is something near and dear to Sean Payton's heart, and he follows the Bill Parcells maxim that if you are a new coach coming to a team, that the area that you can usually make the quickest major impact is on special teams. So Parcells, it was funny because Parcells didn't have that figured out when he first became a head coach. That was something he developed over time because, of course, he eventually went from the Giants to the Patriots, to the Jets, to the Cowboys, and then finally, even though he wasn't coaching, running Miami's football operations. And especially with the Jets and the Cowboys and the Dolphins, those three teams had immediate turnarounds. Sean Payton worked under Bill Parcells in Dallas, goes to New Orleans, and there's an immediate turnaround there. And what was, of all the things that went right for New Orleans in that 2006 season when they went from 3-13 to 10-6, what's the one play everybody remembers? It's Steve Gleason blocking the punt in the Superdome. Literally a play immortalized in a statue.
There's a statue of it
outside the Superdome. That tells you how big that was. And if Sean Payton gets his way this year, you're going to see some impactful plays that come from all the changes made on special teams. So here we go.
It's not one for one, so forgive me if it's a little bit off, but there's the old saying, like, life is hard. It's harder when you're dumb. Football is hard. It's harder when special teams isn't good.
Yeah.
And I think that's why Parcells learned that, because it is tough to be a coach and keep your job in the National Football League. So if you really focus on special teams, win you a game or two, at least.
Right.
So when we talk about Payton, just Sean Payton alone winning the Broncos more games, special teams too.
Like NFL teams are so close to each other, right? They're bunched together.
Yep.
Yeah, and if you're a team like the Broncos, if you don't have a star quarterback, if you don't have an all everything quarterback like a Patrick Mahomes, you have to win games in other ways, and you have to win games at the margins when games are close. And when you're having constant breakdowns in that phase, that's why you lose games. I mean, I don't think the special teams would have made any of these recent Bronco teams Super Bowl teams. But might better special teams in 2021 have made that 7-10 team and 8, perhaps? Yeah, entirely possible. Go back to the 2018 season, Vance Joseph's second season with the Broncos, and you look at Brandon McManus missing a kick. You look at game management. That team lost a lot of games because of little things. And then, of course, there's the butterfly effect. You go back to 2017, bad season for the Broncos. But remember that game against the Patriots? Broncos trying to snap a losing streak, and it was special teams that started the avalanche rolling downhill. Isaiah McKenzie muffs a punt, and they allow kickoff return for a touchdown, okay? That snowball rolls down the hill because of what happens on teams, because the Broncos have been inadequate in that phase at least the last 6 years, and really they weren't great in Joe DeCamillis' second year as coordinator when the Broncos went 9-7 following Super Bowl 50. The last time this team had a plus special teams unit was back in the year they won it. Okay, and that was a team that had to win some games at the margins, especially with the struggles at the quarterback position, and by golly, they did. That run, the ring on everybody's finger that worked for the Broncos, played for the Broncos that season, doesn't happen without Riley. And pardon me, I got ahead of myself. Britton Colquitt having the postseason of his life. Brandon McManus not missing a kick. and then Jordan Norwood with a Super Bowl record punt return. Okay.
Right.
That's, if this is going to work, if this team's going to maximize what it is, you got to get back to that. So this is my evangelization on special teams. Now let's get started, because the biggest move of the offseason was certainly a curious one, and that was in May when, frankly, Sean Payton shocked the NFL by cutting Brandon McManus.
He shocked Brandon McManus. Brandon will tell you himself, like, he was shocked to be released, waived, whatever, cut by the Denver Broncos. So now we're talking about a kicker competition. And you and I have covered this team a long, long time. It's been a while since we've talked kicker competition.
Yeah, it would be, actually, the funny thing is, the last time we talked kicker competition was the preseason before Super Bowl 50's, that magic run. It was Connor Barth versus Brandon McManus. Now, both of them were in Broncos camp. Last month, the Broncos had Randy Bullock, former Bengal, former Texan, former Titan. They had him in on a tryout during minicamp. They didn't sign him. Doesn't mean he's not in the mix. Randy Bullock is basically one of many kickers, whether they're with teams or not with teams, who are effectively the competition for the only kicker on the roster, and that's Elliott Fry. In fact, the best kicker that Sean Payton had in New Orleans, the one who stopped the revolving door that New Orleans had for the first basically decade of Sean Payton's time there, was Will Lutz. Will Lutz was a preseason cut. The Saints were going to sign him to the practice squad, but he did so well when he worked out for him, they just signed him to the 53. And aside from the year he missed to injury back in 2021, he's been the Saints kicker ever since. So Elliott Fry's competition is every kicker who could be cut. I believe there are 16 more kickers on rosters than teams. So there, I believe that's 48 kickers, 32 teams that are currently under contract. And then there are guys not under contract like Bullock, like Robbie Gould, for example.
Mason Crosby.
Mason Crosby's out there. Ryan Suckup is out there. So, and Bullock, I mean, that dude was an 85% kicker last year on field goals, and he made all his PATs. He had a more efficient season than Brandon McManus did. So it was a shocking move to cut McManus, but there are dudes out there, and those are the competition for Elliott Fry. Even if the Broncos don't add a kicker before training camp, the competition is all over the league. Shoot, Brandon McManus, when he first came here, Broncos traded for him at the end of the preseason because he was about to be cut, I believe, by the New York Giants.
Yes.
That's how this works. So they're going to be taking long looks at kickers all over the NFL. Basically, Elliott Fry gets the first shot, but he could do well if someone else is doing better who's potentially available. They're going to make that move and bring them in. So we'll see.
Sean Payton will look everywhere for talent, and you can't just be good or good enough. Like, if there's someone better, he will get them. So I will ask you, Mace, if I put the over-under at 1.5 kickers that kick for the Broncos in 2023, I think all of us would be taking the over.
Yeah, and in fact, Sean Payton's history when he's not sure about the kicker is rather fascinating. The year that they were without Will Lutz, 2021 in New Orleans, Sean Payton's final season, they went through, I believe, 4 kickers. I believe it was 10 kickers that they went through from 2006 to 2015. Sean Payton historically has a short leash with kickers who aren't performing well. That's why you probably take the over on that. Don't be surprised here if at some point during the season we're talking about a kicking competition happening on a Monday or a Tuesday, right? If Elliott Fry has a bad game, they're going
to be bringing players in. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And that's the interesting thing for Elliott Fry is he's filled in for a lot of teams, and he's had tryouts, and he's been on off-season rosters. Elliott Fry hasn't been anybody's regular kicker since he was in the Alliance of American Football back in 2019. And he had a good season that year. He was the best kicker in the AAF. So maybe there's going to be something to be said for Elliott Fry actually having a chance to settle in here in the preseason and kind of getting his sea legs under him. Maybe he proves worthy of that. There are a lot of kickers who bounced around and then succeed once they found a home. The Broncos were, I believe, team number 3 for Brandon McManus, for example. I think Nick Lowry, a great kicker back in the day, I want to say he went through 5 or 6 teams before he finally landed with the Kansas City Chiefs and had a run that lasted, I think, like 14 or 15 years. So there's a history of guys bouncing around before they find their home. And that's why I don't think you can dismiss Elliott Fry here. But he's going to have to go into the situation knowing the pressure's on him every stinking day. And jack wagons like me are going to be sitting there with their notepads charting and cataloging how many he makes and how many he misses. I was doing that in OTAs and in minicamp when he was out there too. Can't share with you what we saw, but I was charting. I know.
We were there. I seen it. It is orange and blue today. Mace, preseason matters. I always get mad when people say preseason doesn't matter. It totally matters. And I think for Elliott Fry, especially, be really good at practice is one thing. Be really good in a preseason game.
Don't miss your PATs, Elliott. That's my advice to that young man. Mm-hmm. Don't miss your PATs, because if you go out there as Charlotte's hair dangles into the camera shot, if you miss a PAT in that preseason game down in Arizona, Katie bar the door. There's going to be tryouts the following week.
Right.
And this is the interesting thing here. This is getting weird.
But that gives you in-game pressure. Like
it
gives
does.
you pressure without threatening a win or a loss.
Yeah,
so that counts in the regular season. That's why the preseason matters, because it gives you the pressure. Like your job's on the line, Elliott Fry, when you line up out there, and that's good for kickers. Kickers need to work under pressure.
Exactly, and he doesn't have a lot of regular season work to his name. It's been just occasional bursts here and there, COVID fill-in type of deal. So I think that's going to help him, quite frankly. I think it can only benefit him if he does well with it. And if he doesn't, then he wasn't good enough anyway. So they're going to give him those shots. I'll tell you what, if I'm Sean Payton, there have been some preseasons where you've said, okay, maybe we want to work more on 2-point conversions. Maybe we want to work more on going for it on 4th down. If you're trying to learn about Elliott Fry, I don't think this is one of those preseasons. I think if you got 4th and 2 from the 40-yard line, 58-yard kick, I think you're trying it. If you score a touchdown, I think you're kicking the PAT. You're not trying your 2-point conversions, because you have to find out about him. He's your only kicker right now. And I think you do have to give him a legitimate shot and legitimate chances there to sink or swim.
Okay. If we move to the returner position,
the game's afoot there.
Position, that's got a lot of different bodies, a lot of talented players that can make this roster. And again, it's a clean slate for everyone, including Montrell Washington, who they do like. I talked to Coach Kotwika. Do I pronounce his name wrong?
Katwika? Yeah.
Katwika. Yeah, Katwika. Yeah. I talked to Coach and asked him specifically, how does he calm Montrell's mind down? Because for me, the physical stuff's easy to see. Whatever. He's quick and he's fast. Yeah. I get it. But his mind, he got the yips. There's a baseball term for you. So I asked Coach, how does he get over that? And he's like, that's what we're working on. So they like Montrell Washington. It's on him to make those plays. Yeah,
they like him, but they also want to get a look at Marvin Mims as well. Yeah. I would say this. I think they like Montrell Washington, but I think they love what Marvin Mims could be if he gets the opportunity as well. And that hasn't happened yet. We talked about earlier on the wide receiver show that, he did miss some time toward the end of OTAs and minicamp, working his way back. Mike Westhoff specifically told me he wants to get a look at Marvin Mims when they get into training camp. So I think they've got extremely high hopes and extremely big intent for Marvin Mims on special teams. it's funny we talk about these two. I think we have to mention Patrick Surtain was working on punt returns from time to time. I do not think he is a primary option. I think he is an emergency option just in case. He's got did it back in high school. Let's take a look. I think it's more about Sean Payton turning over every stone to try and figure out what's the best solution here or solutions, because Marvin Mims might be explosive, but let's say he has a little bit of a fumbling or muff capability, because sometimes that comes with being explosive. That's so you put the ball out and all of a sudden you're a higher risk. Could Pat Surtain perhaps be your punt catcher, kind of like
Jim Leonard?
I wanted Jim Leonard
because he was a fair catch specialist, and Emmanuel Sanders was a returner sometimes too.
Yes. Emmanuel Sanders, Wes Welker, the guys that, you knew it was in good hands when they were out there. Yes. And that's where Pat Surtain maybe comes into play here, if he can master that. Again, it's been a while, but I just want to sit here and say that even though it created a lot of buzz in June, I don't think we're talking about Pat Surtain as a primary option. That is down the list, contingency, and that's okay. That is perfectly fine. It'll probably be Marvin Mims. Montrell Washington will be a factor. I'd also look for Trayvon Smith to maybe be a factor on kickoff returns as well. He has that experience. He's got that club in his bag.
Yeah.
And even look for some other players to be involved.
Jalen Virgil is a great returner.
Yes.
If he can get the catches down. And I was going to ask you, how do the kick return rules change things?
Okay. Well, and that's where kind of catching becomes the big thing on kickoff returns. If you're saying, all right, anytime you can call a fair catch inside the 25, the ball is going to go to the 25 as though it's touchback. So you can call a fair catch at the 10-yard line, ball goes to 25, no harm, no foul. I will just say this, though, for the Broncos. This is a team that is going to try to steal some games at the margins on special teams. I think also, based on what we've seen from Mike Westhoff's special teams over the years, it is a unit that will try to be aggressive. And they will try to zig when everybody else zags. If this becomes a league where a great many teams are calling for fair catches on any kickoff inside 25 and just taking it out to 25 and starting there, if teams are doing that and coverage units are getting out of practice, I think the Broncos are going to try to exploit that and be the team that does actually return kickoffs. And that is the kind of thing that you see from a Mike Westhoff special teams unit, is trying to take advantage of the situation and find a differential advantage. He's been doing that for the better part of the last 40 years, going all the way back to when he first started coaching special teams in Baltimore with the Colts. That's how long ago it was for Mike Westhoff getting into special teams in the NFL. He's always looking for an edge. He's not a loophole. I don't like the term loophole here. He's looking for an edge in the environment that exists. And I can tell you right now, he's scrutinized these rules changes regarding fair catches inside the 25, and is figuring out how can we have an advantage on everybody else. So keep your eye on that.
What about punter? As we wrap up special teams talk on training camp previews, Orange and Blue today.
We'll start punter and long snapper. We're going to close with the ones that are settled, because Mitchell Fraboni had a fill-in appearance last year for Jacob Bobenmoyer. Broncos brought Fraboni back, let Bobenmoyer walk to the Las Vegas Raiders in free agency. So Fraboni is going to be the guy at long snapper. There's no competition for him right now. There's no competition for Riley Dixon. And remember, they cut Corliss Waitman, last year's punter, to make room for Riley Dixon. That was a very intentional move on the Broncos' part, bringing back the 2016 draft pick. So as a result of that, unless there's some calamity, you know what you're getting there. Riley Dixon's a good holder in addition to being a good punter. Actually was doing some of his best work as a punter last year when he was with the Rams. So he's getting better over the course of his career. You've got a mature guy who knows how to place the ball, and he's still got a very strong leg. In retrospect, the Broncos never should have cut Riley Dixon, or not cut. They traded him to the Giants. Never should have let him go.
Yep.
It's nice to have him back.
Nice to have him back. There you go. That's a wrap for special teams. Our training camp previews. I made it.
You're glad to have that over, aren't you? Because that is so not your thing.
I look forward to other positions, yes, but I do respect the play of special teams. I want to make that very clear.
I respect special teamers, period.
Backs. Yeah, I mean, you're on the end of the bench. You're like trying to make this league. Like, it's tough, dude. It's tough. So
those are my dudes
much
in
respect.
the locker room.
Yes,
those are my guys.
Yes. So all love on Orange Blue today. Our training camp previews continue. He's Andrew Mason. You follow him on Twitter at Mace Denver. I'm at Cecil Lammey saying thanks for watching, everybody. Stay tuned and stay frosty.